You know, every time you sit down to a meal with rice, you're plugging into this massive global story of survival. But behind that simple little grain is this constant, invisible war being fought against threats that could literally wipe out entire harvests. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on those unseen enemies and the really smart strategies farmers are using to fight back. Let's dive in.
To really get what's at stake here, we have to start with this fact. This isn't just some popular food. No, it is the absolute bedrock of nutrition for billions of people. From Asia to Africa to the Americas, entire cultures, entire economies are built on this one single grain.
Yeah, you heard that right. A full 50% of the world's population depends on rice for a huge chunk of their daily calories. So when we talk about protecting rice, we're not just talking about farming. We are talking about global food security on a truly massive scale.
So who are the bad guys in this story? Well, they're microscopic, they're relentless, and they are everywhere. We're talking about a real rogues gallery of pathogens that can absolutely devastate a harvest if they're not kept in check.
These unseen enemies fall into three main categories. You can think of them like three different gangs, right? Each one has its own unique MO, its own method of attack. You've got the fungi, the bacteria, and the viruses, and each one poses a totally different kind of threat to the rice plant.
Okay, so now let's get specific. Let's open up the case files on some of the most notorious diseases on every farmer's most wanted list. We're going to look at one major player from each of those three gangs we just mentioned.
First up, from the fungal kingdom, we have the infamous rice blast. This disease is caused by a fungus called Magnaporthy oryzae, and believe me, it is one of the most destructive rice diseases anywhere in the world. It's a real monster.
So here's what farmers are looking for. These really distinct, diamond-shaped spots on the leaves. That's the telltale sign. The disease can also cause something called neck rot, which basically chokes off the nutrients to the grain head and stops the grains from even forming. The defense plan is multi-pronged. It all starts with planting rice varieties that are genetically resistant. Then, you treat the seeds with fungicides before they even go in the ground, and you make sure the soil has a good balance of nutrients.
Next on our most wanted list is a bacterial threat, bacterial leaf blight, or BLB for short. Now, in young plants, this thing has a devastating form called the Kriesik phase. It's this severe, rapid wilting that is almost always fatal for the seedlings.
The fight against BLB means you've got to have a keen eye for the symptoms, like seeing the leaves yellow and dry out, starting from the very tips and moving down. The main defense, again, is planting those resistant varieties. But farmers also have to manage the field itself, like making sure there's good drainage, because this bacteria absolutely loves waterlogged soil. And for a more targeted treatment, copper-based bactericides can be a pretty effective tool.
And now, for our viral villain, tongue row disease. Okay, what's really fascinating about this one is that the virus can't actually spread on its own. It needs a getaway driver. It needs an accomplice to ferry it from one plant to the next.
And that accomplice has an official name. It's called a vector. A vector is just any organism, usually an insect, that transmits a pathogen, that carries a disease from one host to another.
And for tongue row, the specific getaway driver is this little guy right here, the green leaf hopper. It's pretty simple, really. It feeds on an infected plant, picks up the virus, and then it just flies over to a healthy plant and passes on the disease when it feeds again.
So what this means is that managing tongue row disease isn't really about fighting the virus directly, it's about managing its vector. The symptoms are just awful. Stunted growth, yellowing leaves, and the grains just don't develop properly. So the number one defense is to control the green leafhopper population. That's done right alongside planting resistant varieties and, of course, quickly ripping out any infected plants to stop the virus from spreading any further. Okay, so you're facing this whole array of fungi, bacteria, and viruses. A farmer can't just rely on a single weapon, right? They need a complete arsenal. And this brings us to the modern, really intelligent strategy for defending these crops. This whole strategy is called Integrated Disease Management, or IDM, and it's a holistic approach. It's not about finding one quick fix. Instead, it combines a bunch of different tactics to manage diseases in a way that's not only effective right now, but is also sustainable for the long haul. You can think of IDM like building a fortress with 4 layers of defense, with each one building on the last. You start with a strong foundation of cultural controls. Then you add a layer of genetic armor with resistant plants. Then you recruit some natural allies with biological controls. And finally, you use chemical controls, but as a precise, targeted intervention. That foundation, the cultural controls, is really all about smart farming.
Think of it as preventative medicine for the field. We're talking practices like crop rotation, giving plants the proper spacing so they're not crowded, just good field sanitation, like clearing out weeds and old stubble. All of this makes it much, much harder for diseases to get a foothold in the first place. The next layers build on that strong foundation. You've got the genetic armor, using those resistant rice varieties we talked about. Then you bring in biological controls, basically recruiting nature as an ally, using beneficial microbes that can fight off the bad guys. And only then, as a final layer, do you consider a targeted chemical intervention. And this is key. It's not about just spraying chemicals everywhere, it's about the judicious use, a surgical strike, not a blanket bombing. You apply the right product at the right time, only when it's absolutely necessary.
So after looking at all these threats and the complex strategies to fight them, what's the big picture here? What's the main thing we need to remember to protect the future of this incredibly important crop?
And here it is, the most crucial point. There is no single magic bullet. There's no one thing that's going to solve all these problems. Relying on just one method, especially just chemicals, is a losing game. It leads to resistant pathogens, which actually makes the problem worse over time. The only truly effective and sustainable solution is a smart, integrated strategy that uses all the tools in the toolbox to stay one step ahead of these diseases.
And that leaves us with this final, really important question. As our climate continues to change, as new diseases and new pressures emerge, how are we going to adapt these strategies to protect not just rice, but all of our most vital crops? You know, the battle happening in the rice paddy today, it's really a preview of a much larger challenge that's facing all of humanity.